Pakistan's tour of South Africa, 3 ODIs and 3 T20Is were to be played. It all has come to an end. 3-0 victory in the ODIs for South Africa before Pakistan managed to win the final T20I to make it 2-1 South Africa in the T20Is. We are here to talk about all those games, and it's minus the genie, remember? The third T20I had a genie who was granting wishes, and one of them came true. So it's minus the genie today. I'm Sudarshanan, there's company, and this is the Outside View Live. First up, Natalie Germanos, 5-1. The scoreline is not something that will displease you, isn't it?
No, obviously, I mean, as a South African, I'm very happy. South Africa winning the ODIs in a shutout, and in the end, losing the final one, yes, rain interrupted. We don't know what might have happened, but on the day, Pakistan were the better team, and they deserved that victory after what had actually been a good tour for Pakistan in a lot of respects. The scoreline doesn't really tell you exactly how close a lot of those games were, in particular those first 2 ODIs. I was so impressed with Pakistan, and in particular how they never gave up the fight. It looked like a foregone conclusion at times, but they never really gave up that fight, and I really like to see that from Pakistan, because they're only just going to get better, and with confidence and with more of that kind of thinking, they'll get the victories under their belt, and it'll just get better and better for them. But in general, I think South Africa should be very, very pleased with the series. They had a few youngsters come through. They had opportunities, obviously, for the more experienced players to share what they know, share their knowledge, and move on. There's some things to iron out for sure. It wasn't a perfect performance by the Proteas, but all in all, considering they haven't played for 10 or so months in international cricket, I think South Africa should be very pleased with this series.
Yeah, we talked about the genie. There was a little glitch because she granted everybody's wish, but Ananya Upendran, our very own Ananya Upendran, didn't get her wish granted. So she's with us to just look at the series. But what's the genie really? Someone who granted those wishes, Ananya?
I think she was a sham genie. She didn't work at all. She just, she got Pakistan a much-deserved victory, but I think they just played better on the day. So the genie was a sham. Big fail for me.
And of course, we've done this cruel thing through the ODIs and just gave him a better sleep. But here we are keeping Mark Coles awake yet again to talk about his favorite Pakistan and of course the wonderful series that we had. Good to have you, Mark. Your first thoughts about the series?
Oh, look, I agree. I think it was a fantastic series, probably a little bit closer than what we all anticipated, really. And as Natalie said, that Pakistan fought back from almost impossible positions where they'd lost so many early wickets early on, and pretty much every single one of the games, except for the last T20, they were always chasing the game, I suppose you could say. So they did very, very well to chase the game and get so close. So I think they can take away some positives. They're off on a plane trip today to head off to Zimbabwe, which will be an interesting tour in itself. But I think they did deserve that last win. I did feel that the game was starting to change, though, so the rain came at the right time, I think, for Pakistan.
Kind of making a match out of from very, almost lost positions, etc. But here we have some 4-5 points we'll kind of discuss about, and first of them is going to be Pakistan's batting. Mark, tell me what's ailing their batting. That's a very simple question. There's a lot behind it, but top order, middle order, nothing seems to be firing. They then seem like a rocket which kind of takes launches at a later stage. So what ails the batting?
Well, I think we need to find an opener. There's no doubt about that. In fact, not one, but maybe 2, because Nahida Khan did nothing throughout that series at all. So she wasn't the only one, but we need to find someone and a pair that's going to settle. And I think we need to invest some time into that. So if we find those 2, whoever it is, whether it's Muniba, whether it's Aisha Zafar, whether they go back to Nahida Khan, whoever they are, we need to settle with them and actually give them a real good go at it, and invest, as I said, some time and effort into it, and give them that confidence that, okay, you are going to be playing the next series and the series after that. Because I think what I did see was a lot of elastoplast efforts where it was starting to bleed. So we'll just put her in there, and then we tried to mime her in the T20s, and that didn't work. And what that does for players is it just unsettles them. They don't feel that, where am I batting? What am I doing? What is my role in the team? Because it keeps changing. So I think that's probably what David's going to work on. Obviously, he's going to try and find a settled pair. Whether that comes from out of Pakistan after this series, I'm not sure, or whether it's in this group of 17. That's the big question that I guess they have to ask themselves.
Yeah, and you look at the first 3 ODIs, there was Nahida Khan opening the batting with Muniba Ali for the first 2 before Muniba was dropped. Natalie, do you think that Pakistan were kind of confused with the combinations they wished, because they backed Nahida through the ODIs, and then because Javeria Khan missed out on the first 2 T20Is, she continued to play the first T20, and then everything seemed to be a mess. So your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they were probably banking on the experience of Nahida Khan and hoping that maybe that would be something that would be important in South Africa, because you're going up against the best opening pair arguably in the world. So they would have hoped her experience would have brought them through, especially with that new ball. It's one of the toughest places to open the batting is South Africa. It's not an easy place to come and open the batting, even if the pitches generally suited Pakistan more than they did South Africa. So I think from their point of view, not having Bisma Maroof obviously threw a massive spanner in the works. Then they have to then move on from there and find other combinations. And what it ends up doing, whether she's coming in the middle order or not, it changes everything, because there's sort of a domino effect then, because you want to make sure you have certain pairs working together and ones that will work together well. And unfortunately, it just seemed like that question mark of the opening pair, they were never really able to solve it. And even with somebody like Ayesha Naseem, who is so exciting, just 16 years of age. I know she's very young, and they wanted maybe the power in the middle order. I get that, but why not open with her and take advantage of that power play? She was absolutely brilliant. I just felt like they needed to be maybe a little bit more open-minded, and we might not have seen the likes of Nahida Khan struggling. Possibly we might have seen something else that came out of it that was a little bit special. But I just think for Pakistan, if they can solve that opening pair, it definitely will make a big difference to the number 3, number 4, number 5. Takes off a lot of pressure, obviously. And from their point of view, hopefully it'll mean they find a better rhythm with the bat, because I felt like they only found their rhythm with the bat sort of halfway through, whether it was the T20s or the ODIs.
Yeah, the mention of Ayesha Naseem and the confusion kind of segues nicely to the question I'm going to ask you, Ananya, as to what could the solution be, because we've seen a youngster, an attacking youngster, what effect she can have when she's pushed to open. We saw that with India's Shefali Verma. When she was pushed to open, the others kind of fell in place. Of course, the middle order needed to be strong in India's case, but would Pakistan have be better served by pushing Ayesha Naseem to the top, or was it something else? Like, what could be the solution?
I think, in Shefali Verma's case, she's opened through her career in domestic cricket, whether it's under 15s, under 19s, and in senior cricket. So she's always open. So she's a natural opener. Whereas Ayesha Naseem, I think Savera mentioned this, is someone who floats around. I think I remember in last year's T20 triangular, she did come in at number 3, or I think she opened in one of the games, but she batted around that number 3, number 4 position. And whether they want to risk pushing her up and maybe, that hurting her confidence if she doesn't do well. There are a lot of things that I guess they have to consider. But like Mark said, if you tell a player that we're giving you this opportunity and then we're going to back you, say, for the next couple of tours, you're automatically giving her confidence and saying, we don't care if you fail. We just want to push you in that position to see how you're going to do. And I think that's more important than anything else, because what we saw with Pakistan this time especially was the fact that they kept chopping and changing that pair. They stuck with Nahida Khan, they didn't stick with Muniba Ali. And I think it would have been a smarter decision to stick with Muniba Ali, because you've seen over the years what Nahida Khan can do, and you're not sure of what Muniba Ali can do. So I think they need to be a little braver to maybe stick, if they've selected youngsters, to stick with those younger players, give them a longer rope and give them confidence that they're going to back them, because we saw it with Omema Sohail as well. She was the one who missed out despite showing a lot of promise. So I think Pakistan will have to make a few brave calls, but they have the raw material. I think it's just about how they use it.
And cricket as a sport is kind of, whenever there's a dissection of a loss or a game, always the toss is a talking point. Like you talk about men's cricket test matches, there are people who say teams kind of, the toss should be done away with, etc., etc. But throughout this series, we saw Pakistan win the toss on 5 occasions and lose all those matches. Natalie, the surfaces also seemed to kind of favor Pakistan. What's with South Africa being gracious host?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with tosses. If you look across games at the moment, I think in men's test matches, one team that's won the toss has gone on to win the test match this year, or something ridiculous like that. I saw it on Twitter. And that blows my mind. Like, what is going on with tosses? Is this just the 2020, 2021 craziness that is just continuing? I'm not sure. But from Sine Luce's point of view, I'm sure she was at a stage where she was happy just to bring somebody else in just to do the toss, because South Africa, the men's team's done that before. JP Germany came in for Faf du Plessis once before, did the toss. I think he still lost. But anyway, he still tried something a little bit different. But, I think, what can you do? There's really not much you can do. Ask Kane Williamson as well. He's got the same luck with tosses. But the good thing is, from South Africa's point of view, despite losing in the toss, they didn't let that get to them and affect their game plans, affect their tactics, all of those things. And I think in a way, Pakistan also wasn't sure always of what to do, because there were times when they kept chopping and changing for a start, bat first, bowl first. You think their strength is bowling, but they'd want to then bowl when the wicket gets a bit slower later on, but then they were choosing to bowl first because they were hoping for maybe the conditions to help them out. I just feel like they were a little bit unsure at times as to what to do first as well, and maybe that also played into South Africa's hand and sort of helped out the home side a little bit, despite always losing the toss, and unfortunately just didn't have lady luck on their side. And it just so happened that the last one, South Africa won the toss and ended up losing the game. We don't know, again, I'll say it again, we don't know what would have happened. Mignon du Preez at the crease, the way she's been playing over the last few years, anything could have happened in those last few overs. It wouldn't have been an easy chase, but we don't know. But at the end of the day, Pakistan won. They were a good side on the day, but they just happened to lose the toss that day. It's quite bizarre, but like I said, it's 2020 and 2021. This is the kind of things we have to just sort of accept that this is life now.
Yeah, and as a former Pakistan coach, Mark, how do you kind of analyze this? Look at these 3 ODIs. They chased, they almost came close, and then the format changes. There's a new series where you can kind of, at least in the first match, could have tried chasing, and they chose to bat, and kind of that backfired. So how do you read this entire thing?
Yeah, well, look, I think in the first 3, there was a thing called the scoreboard, who's a big player in a lot of games of cricket. And we probably saw that in the first 2 where they got incredibly close, but that scoreboard pressure, every time you look up and you saw the scoreboard, you knew that you had to keep going and keep going and keep going. So you were chasing the game. And it does play a big part in teams. If you've got runs on the board, as we saw last night or yesterday, then you've got to get them. And so South Africa were chasing their tails. And so that scoreboard pressure was mounting. And as we said, we don't know what would have happened if the game had gone to its completion. But it is a big thing. Pakistan are big believers that they're good chasers. I'm not 100% sure whether they've got that quite right. I don't. This would prove to me that they aren't great chasers. And any team that has runs on the board has an advantage because you've got to get them. So I sometimes think that they should bat first, put runs on the board like they did yesterday, although they were forced to yesterday, but they had those runs on the board. And knowing them pretty well, they do tend to start to panic a little bit from time to time and get a bit excited. So that sort of counts against them.
Yeah, in the lead up to the T20Is, we kind of talked about how 3-0 the ODIs win for South Africa wasn't actually a reflection of what played out on the field. We talked about Pakistan's batting woes. Let's move the focus to South Africa. We come to South Africa's fielding, which was surprisingly a bit untidy, if I may so say. We'll come to you, Ananya, for the players' view. But Natalie, you first. What's with South Africa's fielding? They seem to struggle a lot.
Yeah, they really did struggle, and you couldn't blame them really from the first couple of games because they hadn't played together for such a long time. They hadn't had that much opportunity to train either, because all the regulations say you can only train in small amount of groups. Once you're in the bubble, eventually, yes, then maybe you can train together, but they still try and separate them as well. So it's very tough leading up to those first couple of games. So you can really forgive them for the first couple of games. But then as it sort of goes on, you hope that your training, everything that you've done over your career, all of that, especially the experienced players, you hope that all comes in and then it kind of just clicks into place. But it didn't really. It didn't get up to the standard that this team has been setting for the last few years. I still think, even though over the last few years they've been a decent fielding side, they can still take another step up, but they didn't even quite reach the standards that they've set over the last couple of years. I think that we could have seen a bit of a more, certainly a tidier performance from them. And there were times when you could see the frustration as well. It wasn't just a case of in the moment frustration, it was frustration with it happening so many times. And you could actually, it was quite obvious that you could see that frustration from them. It obviously just makes the task much harder. Who knows what would have happened if it was up to the standard that they would have liked. It may have not been as close in the end. And there are at times crucial moments too, and kind of bizarre patterns as well, because it seemed like the games, they started pretty well, and then it sort of the standards kind of dropped a little bit as the game went on. And especially in those chase overs, that's when things seemed to go even worse for them. There seemed to be a lot more mistakes in those pressure overs, which can be a little bit concerning, because that's the time when you want to be 100% on your game, because that's really crucial. That's where a game can be won and lost, especially in an ODI when in a close chase. You get to a stage where those last turnovers are really important, and you can really end up losing the game as a result of not being 100% on your game. I didn't think the ground fielding was too bad. Hitting the stumps might have helped, or at least appealing when you do hit the stumps direct also might help as well. I mean, that was a directed from the boundary, and if they had appealed, who knows what would have happened. Also, from a point of view of obviously the high catches, that's something that South Africa is really going to have to work on for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, and who knows, if they would have fielded well and hit those direct hits, we would have had more nails in our fingers. But coming to you, Ananya, and for those of you watching, we're talking about South Africa's fielding at length because we know what they are capable of. They've shown it during the T20 World Cup last year, and then those of the South Africans who played in the WBBL and also in the T20 Challenge did very well. So that is the surprising aspect. But coming to you, Ananya, we're talking about South Africa. Remember, they are the hosts. The Durban, the Kingsmead conditions are known to them. And as a fielder, I'm sure that you would be wanting to field a lot in conditions, as opposed to if you are touring away to an alien condition. But did you see something that kind of hampered South Africa? Because remember, there's always a tendency to kind of blame or kind of put that floodlights as an excuse. There weren't floodlights here. So what can be the reason?
No, it feels like a mystery, because when you look at everything they've done, it's definitely not technical, because they were all getting to the ball, they were all under the ball, and then there was, maybe it's possible that they were taking their eyes off it, but like Natalie said, I think in those pressure moments, things just got worse. And it's in those pressure moments that you would like your players to kind of step up. But I think what I found very strange, not just with South Africa, but with Pakistan as well, was the fact that they did all the hard work to get to the catches or to cover the ground. And then, it was that last minute, whether it was getting their hands under the ball or getting their body behind the ball, it was those last minute, the last step where everything went wrong for them. And of course, when you take the last step wrong, everything goes wrong. So, I don't know. Mark said this a lot during those post-match shows, but how do you correct this is a question that I don't know who can answer, because it's kind of like, it's not a technical error. It's whether it's something mental, whether it was, I mean, initially you can understand it because we saw with the men as well, there were a lot of drop catches in that India-Australia series. And so it's possible that it started off because they hadn't played a lot, they hadn't, fielded in open ground conditions a lot. So, to judge the pace of the ball coming to you, all that takes a little bit of time. But, with experienced players, there's muscle memory that kicks in, there's all that kind of stuff that kicks in. So right now, for me, it feels like a mystery as to why it hasn't happened, but it's also possible that it's a mystery because I haven't gone onto the field for like 12 months. So I don't know what that feels like right now.
Fair point. But these were a couple of kind of gaping weaknesses in each of these sides, but there was a common theme as well. Both the teams kind of had a weakish batting because if the top order did well, the middle order struggled and vice versa. But the bowling attack was something that everybody loved. Diana Baig, Ayman Anwar, Fatima Sana for Pakistan, whereas Shabnim Ismail, Marizan Kaap. So, Mark, tell us more about the bowling. A strong point for both these sides, isn't it?
I think, we know about South Africa with those two. They're world class. I don't think there's a better attack in the world, and that would be the two Australians, Perry, and just her name escapes me, Shoot. So they're good, but these two are better. There's no doubt about that. Absolutely world class. And Diana and Fatma Sana did a very good job at the top in the ODIs. I mean, Diana does swing the ball and she causes some issues early on when she gets it right. So she needs to be looked after. I do think that she'll hate it, but she probably needs a game off somewhere along the line in Zimbabwe when they go there because her shoulder's gone now. I noticed that she was bowling it in. She's fielding in the circle. So she just needs to rest for a little bit. But I thought Pakistan bowled pretty well at the front to Lee and Wolver. Yeah, they got going in a couple of the games, but you'd expect that again, a very good opening pair. And as we talked about South Africa, well, they just caused absolute mayhem in that top order of Pakistan. That was always going to be pretty tough. They're just world class. So you need to find a way of trying to stop them from getting early wickets and just being, as we talked about in the ODI series, none for 25 to 30 in those first 10. The issue was that Pakistan were never that in that first 10. They were always 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 down, after they'd finished their spells. So that was a problem. I was reasonably impressed with both bowling sides. Obviously, one very impressed and the other, I thought Pakistan held their own.
Yeah, fair. And the tracks seem to be kind of have a nature of the subcontinental wickets, and that's where, Ananya, I'd like you to kind of add your team pacer hashtag and talk to us about. We saw both the seamers from both teams do really well. Like, they weren't too expensive. They didn't find it too tough. There was Masabata class who kind of went for a bit of runs in the T20s, especially yesterday. But you talk about Shabnim, the Kaap, the Diana Baig, the Ayman Anwars, Fatima Sana, of course. All these seamers did really well. They were incisive. They kind of managed to keep a check on the batters. So what was it about seam bowling on this track that impressed you?
Well, I think one, with South Africa, it was the plans. It was the fact that they knew exactly what lines and lengths to bowl to each batter. And I think that's what really helped them, whether it was Aisha Zafar pushing her onto the back foot, not giving her anything to loft straight and then bringing her forward. So I think they got their plans really clear. They saw Umema Sohail pounce on width in that ODI. And after that, they didn't give her any width. They were very straight to her, tucked her up, bowled short on her body, and she really looked uncomfortable. So I think, with South Africa, it was just their planning that was really impressive. And of course, the execution of those plans. I thought, with the experience of Ismail and Kaap, you expect them to be, as good as they were. So with South Africa, it was the planning. But with Pakistan, I think, Diana Baig up front, the fact that she got the ball to swing and she was so good with the areas she bowled in. I thought to Liz Ali, of course, in the first ODI, she was very, very good to her straight and got her LBW. I thought she'd nick her off, but I think the LBW was better. But I think Diana Baig was just generally very consistent. She bowled very good areas, and And through that ODI series, she was able to generate some swing with the new ball. And with Aiman Anwar later in the T20Is, I thought just her change-ups, the fact that she came in and bowled some really good Yorkers. So I think the fast bowlers, I was really surprised and pleasantly surprised to see, the pacers bowl short balls. I have never seen Diana Baig try and bowl the bouncer, but the fact that with a bad shoulder, she still tried to come in and bowl a couple of short balls, I was pleasantly surprised. It's nice to see that the women seem more comfortable bowling bouncers. I think that's something that really needs to come into the women's game. It's something that you don't really see much of. So yeah, I think, like you said, the pacers held their own on tracks that didn't suit them at all. But I think it was the change-ups and the variety that they brought. The fact that they weren't all very predictable. It wasn't just bowling a back of a length. They came in and they bowled their cutters, their slower balls, and their Yorkers. So I think that was something that really impressed me.
Yeah, Diana Baig, it was the first time that she toured South Africa. So perhaps that's something she might have seen on those tracks that kind of forced her to bowl short and try the bouncers. But Natalie, this series also revealed how about the depth in South African cricket, isn't it? Because you saw the final ODI where Mignon and the likes were rested. In fact, the third T20 kind of told us more, that they made as many as 4 changes. The 3 frontline openers were kind of benched, and they opened with Annika Bosch and Faye Tunnicliffe, and yet they kind of almost made a match out of it. So as we always say, if not for rain, what would have happened? So we don't know that. So this series kind of revealed how the bench strength of South Africa, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And that's only good news for South Africa, in particular because we haven't had any domestic cricket here in South Africa, despite the Women's T20 Super League that they had. But that's just over a weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's a few T20 matches. That's not a lot of game time. It's not a lot of real match time. So they haven't really had the opportunity, some of these players, to get some time under the belt, some match time, whereas some obviously went to the WBBL and the Women's T20 Challenge, but that's the cream of your crop in South Africa. That's your top players. But for the other players to come through and show what they can do is great. I mean, South Africa even started the ODI series with Tumi Sekhukhune. It wasn't with their best bowlers in Ayabonga Kaka and Masabata Klaas. Those are brilliant first change bowlers, and again, some of the best in the world really as first change bowlers, and they weren't able to play in that first one because they weren't feeling well. So it made a big difference to that lineup. And I was thinking about it because there are people saying, who's the next generation coming through, etc., etc. And it is important to always keep an eye on it. But it's so difficult to give some of the other players game time because you've got Marizanne Kapp, Ismail, Kaka, and Klaas, just those as the 4 seamers. Which one do you drop? Which one do you rest? Which one do you give? How do you make space for somebody else? It's very, very difficult. And Tumi Sekhukhune got the opportunity with the national side for a little while, in particular because Ayabonga Kaka was injured and had that shoulder injury for such a long time, and she was out of international cricket. So she did have that opportunity with the side, which is absolutely invaluable because now when she does come in games, at least she knows how it all works. She's been in with the team and she doesn't have those nerves of starting out her international career. But it really is sort of it's so like waterlogged almost in those seamers, because where do you find space for anybody else? And there are a few seamers in the South African domestic system that could easily come through and get an opportunity. But unfortunately, there's only so much space. So I was really glad to see that others got that opportunity. Obviously, from a batting point of view, it was great to see Tasman Brits get the chance, because if Dane van Niekerk was fit, we might not have seen Tasman Brits. We might not have even seen Laura Goodall if Chloe Tryon was around as well. So it's really great that these chances have been given. Love to see more of Annika Bosch, depending on situation and where she bats. She does open the batting in T20s for a domestic side, so that wasn't completely foreign to her. She's done it for Northwest before. But I would like to see her get a few more opportunities. I think she's got something that's special. Faye Tunnicliffe, it's going to be pretty tough for her to obviously find a space. But what this also does is put pressure on those other players, like Lizelle Lee, for example, who throughout this tour never lived up to her potential. Yes, she had 1 or 2 good innings, but she wasn't at her absolute destructive best. I think we can see a lot more from her, but you want to put pressure on those players because they must fight for their place in the side. They can't feel that, oh, we are definitely going to get selected. We'll always be in that starting 11.
Yeah, fair point. Those selection dilemmas that you just mentioned it was not choosing experience versus youngster. There's Annika Bosch who's kind of constantly been on the bench, but remember she's not a youngster to kind of gain experience from the bench. So that speaks volumes about the quality. And I think we might also see that Sinalo Jafta could be the preferred wicketkeeper for South Africa in T20Is because she played the 3 games, kept Trisha Chetty out. There's a lot to talk about, but let's look forward as we kind of wrap this edition. What South Africa doing next? What is Pakistan doing next? Pakistan is just traveling next door. They're flying to Zimbabwe for 5 games. Mark, what's those points that they'll like to correct or kind of fix in that series?
I think they need to, they're going on the plane to Zimbabwe. They've got a little bit of confidence from that last win. Doesn't matter whether you completed the game or not. It's a W in the column, which is great. So they'll feel a little bit better about themselves. But I think this trip is really now to nail down or to make use of the time, try and nail down those openers. Who are the openers moving forward? Just to get a little bit more confidence and try and find a pretty stable 11 that you're going to stick with for a period of time. We've talked about the fact that they kept changing it. You've got to, going into these World Cup qualifiers that are coming up soon, that's going to be important to have a really set, solid first 11. This is our top 4. You'd expect Bismar will come back into that, but these are our top 4. These are our spin bowling options. These are our quick bowlers, and this is our 2 opening batters. That's it, done. We're sorted. Because I don't think you can go into a World Cup qualifier with Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and the West Indies, those 3, and be not 100% sure about what you're going to do and what your plans are. Because I think those 3 in particular are dangerous teams. But let's not rule out the likes of Thailand, the USA, who are coached by Julia Price. There's a whole lot of teams there that for Pakistan have the word banana skin on it. And that worries me. If we don't get this right very, very quickly, this could fall over and they find themselves, a close loss to Thailand, which they nearly did in the T20 World Cup, or USA maybe beating them, or someone coming in and beating them that you wouldn't expect to beat Pakistan.
Yeah, while you mentioned about Pakistan looking to kind of cement their openers, top 4, top spinners, etc., would you say that's the end of the road for someone like Nahida Khan, who was kind of given a longish rope, we'd say, in 4 out of 6 matches if she's played? So do you see that's the end of the road for her?
I think it's getting closer because of her age, and I think moving into a World Cup now, and that's nothing against age, but I think you do have to start thinking about the future and where that future is for her. I mean, she's got a great ability. She's very determined. She has a magnificent ability to come back and prove you wrong time after time. But I just think maybe now is the time to say, right, you've been a fantastic performer for Pakistan over the years, but we are going down another pathway. Whether they're brave enough to do that or not, I don't know. And remember, I guess we have to find someone that is actually going to be better than her. So, and we didn't find that. So that's part of the problem. Poor old Muni was opening, and then I think in one of the T20s she was down at 3 or 4, so she was all over the place, and then dropped and back, and there's just no stability in it with young people that are 20, 21 years old. They're looking for that stability and being given a proper and decent chance.
Right. So Zimbabwe first for Pakistan, followed by the World Cup qualifiers, hopefully in June, July sometime. But coming to South Africa, where are they going? They're flying to India for 8 games. So Ananya, your thoughts first. These tracks were sort of subcontinental-ish. So would that kind of keep them in good stead heading to India?
Oh, probably will. I mean, they came to India in 2019 and really, really struggled on slow tracks in Surat and Baroda. So hopefully, this time, having played in home conditions in what were very slow tracks, hopefully they've they've kind of, found a method. We saw that, I think it was the experienced players like the Marizan Kaps, the Mignon Duprees, who played spin better than the others. I think, of course, Laura Wolfart, but I think that the younger players were still kind of getting used to it. It was just that sweep shot that was coming out. So hopefully it does put them in good stead, hold them in good stead, sorry. I'm just very excited to see Mignon Dupree in India. I'm really, really excited. I hope, I think she's their best player of spin. And she's proven that over a long time. I think even in 2019, she was easily the most comfortable looking batter against the likes of Ekta Bisht and Poonam Yadav, using her feet, coming down the track. And I hope that, those players help the likes of, if Annika Bosch, Tasman Brits, if these guys make the trip, then I hope, they're able to help them understand how they can play spin, probably how they can get used to these conditions and score runs in these conditions. Because of course the World Cup is in New Zealand, so they may not read too much into how they do in India, but it's only going to help them develop their game. So I hope South Africa do a lot better than they did in 2019. I just hope it's a really good series, because India are going to come out of hibernation after 12 months, and South Africa have a bit of cricket under their belt. So I think it's going to be an interesting and very exciting series.
Yeah, the details of the tour are yet to be clear as to the dates, as the venues, etc., whether it's going to be in one place or different, at least in a single city. But Natalie, you think South Africa are kind of well equipped to tour India in terms of their batting combinations? In ODIs, we probably saw what it might look like, the team, the order. But in T20s, they seem to be kind of shuffling their players around. And do you think they are equipped to handle spin in India, bowl spin in India? We saw Shangase impress in the final T20. We know how good Mlaba is. So your thoughts on South Africa touring India?
Well, I think obviously they're going to take a lot from their previous tour. They've got a lot of footage now that they can work on, a lot of things that they've had to correct after that tour, because the one game that they did play really well in Surat was that final T20, which was, what was it, the 6th or 8th or 9th or whatever it was. Remember, they had to add on a few T20s because of all the rain, and it was great that we actually got some cricket in, but that pitch was completely different. That pitch had a little bit of pace and a little bit of bounce, and it suited South Africa down to the T. It wasn't something that really suited India. And you could see how good South Africa are in those type of conditions. Now, from a batting point of view, I think in the T20s, I don't think they're too unhappy with a few changes here and there and being a little bit more flexible with their lineup. I don't think they mind it too much. And I think they kind of like being flexible, because you want to be able to say, all right, if we need to, for example, have somebody go up the order like a Fleury Tryon, who needs to score runs quickly, we can do that. And it works well for South Africa. I think they would like to be one of those teams, especially in the shorter format. I think from the one-day internationals, they definitely seem very settled on a lineup. It will be interesting to see how Danae van Niekerk obviously fits back into that when she is eventually fit. She brings a lot to the batting lineup. She brings stability. She brings obviously experience, and she is somebody who can bat long as well. So I think for South Africa, they seem pretty settled on the batting, and it looks like Laura Wolfart is going to be fitting in that number 4 in the T20s, which is a very interesting position for her. I hope she's not batting too low down the order, 5 and 6, like we did see in the T20 World Cup. As much as it worked there against Pakistan, for sure, and we saw some wonderful innings from her, I'd like to see her bat for longer periods of time. I don't want to see her always batting at 5 and 6. Bowling, I'm really excited about the spin, because obviously from South Africa's point of view, we know the strength is seen. And I hate to say it, be complacent about it, but you rely on Cup and Ishmael, and you kind of know what to expect from them. Kaka is a wonderful change. She also had the experience of playing in the T20 Challenge as well, which would have done her the world of good. But if we look at 2019, Mlaba was making her debut, so it was all very new to her. Still very young as well. Shangase had just played a couple of games coming into that. She had never played in the subcontinent, but now they've had that experience and they've had a few more games. Mlaba has shown what she can do under pressure situations in Australia and had a very good series here, despite